Have you ever wondered how a big idea from a company actually turns into the software we use every day? It really isn't magic. It's a super detailed process of translation. And that's the journey we're going to follow today, from just a simple request all the way to a technical blueprint that developers can actually use to build something real.
Right, so that's the big question, isn't it? And to get to the bottom of it, we're going to take just one business problem and follow it from the very beginning to the very end. We'll see exactly how a system analyst takes, well, a total mess and turns it into something crystal clear, one step at a time.
Okay, so it always starts with a problem, right? Someone, in this case, let's say the CEO of our made up company ShopEasy, comes in with a whole laundry list of issues. And if you look at what they're saying, it's a jumble of everything. You've got complaints about speed, you've got requests for new features, and these really high level goals. This is exactly the kind of raw, totally unstructured stuff an analyst gets handed at the start. So, what's the first thing an analyst has to do? Honestly, their first job is to be a translator. Because let's be real, you can't just throw that mess of feedback at a developer and say, here, build this. No way. They have to break it all down piece by piece and turn that vague business speak into a structured language that the tech team can actually understand and, build from. And this whole process of breaking things down, it actually has a name. It's called requirements analysis. And honestly, it's probably the most fundamental skill an analyst has. It's all about listening really, really carefully, asking the right questions, and then writing down three absolutely crucial things. What does this thing need to do? How well does it need to do it? And maybe most importantly, why are we even building it in the first place? And listen, this is not a small part of the job. We're talking about analysts spending something like 40% of their time just on this one phase. And you might be asking, why so much? Well, because if you mess this up, if there's a misunderstanding right here at the start, you're not just creating a tiny bug. You could sink the entire project. Getting this right from day one is literally everything. So this is how that sorting happens. The analyst takes that whole stream of consciousness from the CEO and starts putting things into buckets. So when the CEO says customers need to browse products, that's a functional requirement. That's what the system does. When they say pages must load fast, that's non-functional. That's how it performs. And that bit about reducing the 30% of lost orders, that's the big one. That's the business requirement. The whole reason we're doing any of this. Okay, so at this point, we've figured out what the system has to do and how well it needs to do it. But that immediately leads to the next big question, right? Who are we actually building this for? To get that answer, analysts have this really simple but super powerful tool they use, called a use case diagram. It really just boils down to identifying two things. First, the actor, and that's just a fancy word for anyone or anything that's going to interact with the system. And second, the use case, which is the specific goal that actor wants to accomplish. And here's what that looks like. This is our first real blueprint. Over on the left, you've got your actors, the customer and the admin. And then you see all these lines connecting them to their use cases, basically all the things they need to do, like place order or manage products. Just like that, in one simple picture, we have a complete high-level map of every single thing a user can do in the new ShopEasy system. All right, so now we know who is doing what. The next layer of this whole blueprint is figuring out the flow. I mean, how does information actually move around inside the system to make all those goals happen? It's time to follow the data. Yeah, let's go back to that place order goal for a second. When a customer actually does that, what information gets created? Where does it go? Does it get saved somewhere? Does it trigger something else to happen? Answering all these questions, well, that's the next level of detail we need for our blueprint. And yep, you guessed it, there's a tool for that. It's called Data Flow Diagram, or DFD for short. Honestly, the best way to think of a DFD is like a plumbing diagram, but instead of water, it's showing you how information flows. It maps out exactly where data comes from, how the system chews on it, and where it ends up. So here's what it looks like in action. You can actually see the data, like the order details, flowing from the customer and into a process. Then, that process takes the information and writes it into a data store. You can see it labeled OrderDB. We are literally drawing a map of the system's guts, how everything moves around inside. Okay, so we've tracked all the data while it's moving around. But what about that OrderDB we just mentioned? That's where the data lives when it's not moving. It's the system's memory, basically. And you can't just dump stuff in there. It needs its own detailed architectural plan. And this is such a critical step, because without a really well thought out structure, all you have is a digital junk drawer, where you can never find anything. Every single customer, every product, every order, each one needs a permanent, organized spot to live so the system can find it and use it whenever it needs to without any problems.
And that blueprint for the database? It's called an Entity Relationship Diagram, or ERD. I love this analogy. Think of it like the floor plan for a house. It lays out all the main rooms where you'll store data. Those are called entities. And it also shows you the hallways that connect all those rooms. Those are the relationships.
So this diagram is what brings all that organization to life. You can see we've defined separate tables for things like customers, products, and orders. And those lines connecting them, they define how they're all related. For example, that line shows that one customer can have many, many orders. This structure, this becomes the logical backbone for the whole system. Okay, we're getting really close now. Let's recap. We've got the big picture goals, we know how data moves, and we know where it's all stored. So now it's time to zoom all the way in, down to the most nitty-gritty level, the exact step-by-step logic the software needs to follow to actually get stuff done. Let's go back to that place order process one more time. What happens exactly if someone's credit card fails? Or what if an item goes out of stock right as they click buy? The software can't just guess what to do. It needs a super clear, step-by-step recipe that covers every single possible outcome. And to build that recipe, analysts pull out a classic, the flow chart. You've probably seen these before. It just uses a few simple shapes to tell the whole story. You've got ovals for the start and the end, rectangles for any action or task, and then the most important one, the diamond. That's a decision point, where the path has to split based on a yes or a no. And here's that logic all laid out visually. You can literally trace the entire journey an order takes. See? If you follow the yes path after the payment goes through, boom, the system sends a confirmation and updates the inventory. But if you follow the no path, it kicks out an error message and lets the user try again. Every single possibility is mapped out. Nothing is left to chance. And just like that, we're here. We've done it. Remember where we started? With that big jumble of ideas and problems from the CEO. And now, by following this structured process, layer by layer, we've built a complete, incredibly detailed blueprint. And this really brings the whole journey full circle, doesn't it? We started way back with that high-level goal from our use case diagram, place order. And now, look where we've ended up, with a super detailed flowchart that shows the step-by-step logic for exactly how that happens. This right here is the magic of systems analysis. It connects that 10,000-foot view directly to the nuts and bolts on the ground. So this complete blueprint, this is the final handoff. The analyst's job as a translator is officially done. Now the developers can take over and start their job, construction, with absolute precision. So you see, the journey from just an idea to actual software, it isn't magic. It's just meticulous step-by-step analysis. Which, of course, leaves us with one last question to chew on. What happens when these perfect, clean plans meet the messy reality of writing code?